Welcome to the 1 Hour Guide by Anil Nathu.
Great to be here.
Today we're going to do a deep dive into the 1 Hour Guide summary of Main Street Millionaire: How to Make Extraordinary Wealth Buying Ordinary Businesses by Codie Sanchez.
Oh, this is going to be good.
Yeah. So our mission, right, is to kind of pull out the core principles, the essential insights, and the lessons that Sanchez wants to share in this guide.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of really interesting ideas here.
Yeah. And the goal is, for you, the listener, is to give you a really clear understanding of her approach to building wealth
Well,
through buying existing businesses.
absolutely.
So if you're listening to this, you're probably, looking for an alternative path to financial freedom. Maybe you're thinking, hey, I don't want to climb the corporate ladder, or maybe you're just intrigued by these wealth building strategies that a lot of people, they don't even know about.
Right, right.
They don't even think about. So this deep dive is really for you. And again, it's based on the 1 Hour Guide by Anil Nathu.
A really fantastic resource.
Yeah. We're going to unpack the most impactful ideas, give you actionable knowledge without overwhelming you with, too much.
Absolutely. Trying to make it digestible, give you what you need
Exactly.
to actually apply this stuff.
So one of the things that just jumps out right away in Main Street Millionaire is how Codie Sanchez challenges some of these really deep-seated ideas that we have about building wealth.
Okay.
Okay, she's got this really interesting argument against this whole traditional way of employment and how it can actually lead to like financial limitation instead of true freedom.
Yeah, and I love that idea of what she calls the 9 to 5 trap.
Right. Right.
She basically says that, the way we're educated, right, is often it trains us for obedience.
Yeah.
For following orders. It doesn't really cultivate this, entrepreneurial mindset.
Yeah, it's like we're being prepared to be good employees,
Yeah.
not necessarily to be owners. Right. And so this leads to what she calls the illusion of stability. Go to school, get a good degree, get a job, work really hard for decades, and then, maybe retire comfortably around 65.
Right, the traditional path.
Right. But what she argues is that that whole system actually can keep people in a state of financial dependence.
Yeah, that's a really crucial point.
Mm.
If we connect this to the broader message in the book, it's all about shifting your perspective. Sanchez is advocating for a mindset where you're not just relying on a paycheck. You're looking to own assets, things that generate cash flow.
Right, right.
She even quotes Warren Buffett. She says, if you don't find a way to make money while you sleep, you'll work until you die.
Wow, that's powerful.
Yeah, pretty direct, right? But it really underscores the limitations of trading your time directly for money.
Yeah.
And Sanchez, she flips the script. She says, instead of earning your way to wealth, you can buy your way in. You leverage cash flow from day one by owning the business.
That's a huge mindset shift. And she's really drawing a contrast between equity and salary.
Absolutely.
Employees, regardless of what they're making, are essentially exchanging their time and skills for wages, right?
Yeah.
Owners, on the other hand, they build wealth through equity. And that equity, that has the potential to grow in value over time.
Right. And she makes the point that owning a business isn't just about the income it generates in the short term. It's about the leverage, the potential tax advantages,
Right.
and the possibility of a really substantial payday down the line if you decide to sell.
Okay, so she's not just diagnosing the problem, though, right?
Exactly.
She's actually giving a framework for taking action.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's where this R.I.C.H framework comes in.
Right. That's her system, her systematic approach to moving away from that traditional path.
Yeah, the R.I.C.H framework, that sounds like it's really the heart of her strategy for building wealth through acquisition.
It is.
Can you give us a quick overview of what each of those letters stands for?
Sure. So R.I.C.H. It's an acronym for the 4 essential stages of acquiring a business, according to Sanchez.
Okay.
So R, that stands for research. This is all about identifying the perfect business for your situation.
Yeah.
And then finding those motivated sellers, like know the playing field and who's ready to get out of it.
Okay, makes sense.
That's for invest. And this is where you're using, smart and sometimes unconventional financing methods to actually buy the business.
Yeah.
The core principle here is financing the future with the profits that the business is generating today.
Interesting.
C, that stands for command.
Okay.
This is about effectively managing the business,
Okay.
building the right team and systems, empowering others to run the day-to-day while you focus on building the future of the business.
Gotcha.
And finally, H, that's harness. This is all about scaling, automating, and planning for your eventual exit.
Okay. Okay, that's a great overview of the R.I.C.H framework. And after that, Sanchez, she talks about what she calls the overlooked gold mine of Main Street businesses.
Yes.
This sounds like a key insight.
It is.
What's the main idea here?
So she highlights this really interesting statistic.
Hmm.
If we look at the U.S. economy, there are about 3 million small businesses. And together, they generate something like $6.5 trillion in revenue every year. They employ about 32 million people. So it's a huge segment of the economy. But what she's pointing out is that this is an overlooked opportunity.
Okay, yeah, because usually, when we think about entrepreneurship, we think about those high-growth tech startups.
Right, right.
The ones that promise huge returns, disrupting markets.
Absolutely.
So what makes these maybe less glamorous Main Street businesses, what makes them so attractive in her view?
There are a couple of key factors. First, there's this demographic shift happening right now.
Mm.
She calls it the baby boomer sell-off. Basically, more than half of small business owners are over 60. And a lot of them, they don't have clear succession plans.
Wow.
So as they start thinking about retirement, a lot of these businesses, they might end up closing if there's no buyer.
Right.
And this creates a huge opportunity for acquisition. The second thing is, she argues that these businesses, your laundromats, your plumbing companies, your local HVAC services, they often have really predictable revenue streams. Their operations are pretty straightforward.
Okay.
And there's always demand for these services. So they might not be the most exciting businesses, but they often represent really stable, dependable cash-generating assets.
That makes sense. So the very first step in the R.I.C.H framework is research.
Right.
So it's all about finding the right business for you and then finding those motivated sellers. How does she break down this initial phase in the 1-Hour Guide by Anil Nathu?
So the research phase starts with defining your perfect fit business.
Yeah.
And she really emphasizes it's not about finding the best business in some objective sense. It's about finding the best business for you,
Right.
for your skills, your interests, your financial goals.
Okay.
She actually lays out 4 levels of businesses, and it's kind of a spectrum.
Yep.
At one end, you have solo operations. These are things like laundromats. They require very little active management.
Okay.
Then there are hands-on CEO businesses, maybe a local landscaping company or a small retail shop.
Okay.
Further along, you have businesses with $1 to $5 million in revenue. And then finally, you have the market leaders. These are multi-location, more complex businesses.
Got it.
But for most people doing their first acquisition, she recommends sticking with those first 2 levels.
So starting smaller.
Yeah, starting with something manageable.
Yeah, something that aligns with what you're already good at. Now, what about finding these motivated sellers?
Right.
That sounds like a key piece of the puzzle.
It is. And like we talked about before, the wave of baby boomer retirement, it's creating a lot of opportunities.
Mm.
These owners, they're often looking for a way out. They might be more open to creative deal structures or even a quick closing.
Right.
So Sanchez lays out a few ways to find these opportunities. You can look at online marketplaces like BizBSell. You can work with brokers who specialize in these types of transactions.
Okay.
And then there's even direct outreach.
Yeah.
So you find a business that looks interesting, you reach out to the owner directly, just ask, hey, would you consider selling?
So be proactive.
Exactly. And you can also network within local business associations or even industry-specific groups. You'd be surprised how effective that can be.
Wow. So what are some signs that a seller might be truly motivated? Like, what should we be looking for?
So the 1-Hour Guide, it points to a few telltale signs. An owner who's clearly ready to retire, especially if they don't have a family member lined up to take over.
Okay.
Someone who seems to be losing their passion for the day-to-day operation.
Right.
Or maybe they need to sell quickly because of personal circumstances.
Yeah.
And then there's seller financing. This is a big one. If a seller is willing to finance part of the purchase price themselves, that's a really good sign.
It sounds like that would be a big advantage for the buyer, too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Imagine the current owner essentially becomes your bank. They finance part of the deal with agreed-upon terms and interest rates. It can really reduce the amount of upfront cash you need.
That's interesting. So let's say you found a business. Seems like a good fit, seller's motivated. What's the next crucial step in this research phase?
That's where the evaluation comes in, the due diligence. And Sanchez, she's really big on this. You need to thoroughly analyze the business's financials. Look at their profit and loss statements, their tax returns, their balance sheets. Go back at least 3 years. You're looking for consistent revenue, healthy profit margins.
Sure.
She recommends aiming for at least 15%. And you want to watch out for red flags, like excessive debt.
Right.
So for example, when you look at the P&L, Pay attention to recurring revenue streams and the cost of goods sold. Are those stable? Are they predictable? And on the balance sheet, check the debt-to-equity ratio. A lot of debt can be a bad sign.
Got it.
You also need to evaluate the customer base. Look at things like customer retention rates. Online reviews can be really helpful too.
Right.
And finally, you want to assess how complex the operations are and how much the business depends on the current owner. If the business has well-documented systems and processes, that's going to make the transition a lot smoother.
Okay, so after all that research, hopefully you found a promising business.
Right.
Now, the second step in the R.I.C.H framework is invest.
Right.
Does this mean you need a ton of money sitting in your bank account?
Not necessarily. That's a really important point.
Hmm.
This phase is all about smart financing,
Okay.
structuring deals in a way that works for you. And Sanchez, she introduces this concept called the life-changing magic of profit paybacks.
Profit paybacks, what does that mean?
It means focusing on how quickly the business can generate enough profit to pay back what you invested to buy it.
Okay.
So ideally, you want that payback period to be somewhere between 1 and 3 years.
Okay.
The faster the payback, the lower the risk, and the faster you can start reinvesting those profits.
Makes sense.
She also cautions against businesses with really long payback periods.
Right, because that would increase your risk.
Exactly.
So it's not just about the sticker price, right?
Yeah.
It's really about how fast you can get your money back.
Exactly.
Okay, so what are some of the smart financing strategies that the 1 Hour Guide talks about?
Well, one of the most powerful strategies, especially for first-time buyers, is seller financing.
Right, we talked about that a little bit.
Yeah, so the current owner actually helps finance the purchase.
Okay.
And that can really reduce the amount of cash you need up front.
Mm-hmm.
There are also SBA loans. These are government-backed loans, and they often have really good terms for small business acquisitions.
Okay, so there's help out there.
Yes. And then there's revenue-based financing. This is where your loan payments are tied directly to how much revenue the business is generating.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. And you can even consider bringing in equity partners. These are people who invest money in exchange for a share of ownership.
So there are lots of options.
Lots of options. You don't necessarily need to drain your savings account.
Okay, good to know. So beyond just getting the financing, what else should we be doing to prepare during this invest phase?
Sanchez emphasizes 2 things: thorough financial due diligence and legal due diligence.
Okay.
So on the financial side, it's about verifying everything you looked at during the research phase. Really dig deep into those financial statements, make sure the numbers are accurate, consistent. You're looking for steady revenue, good expense management, and positive cash flow.
Right, right.
Legally, you absolutely need to review all the contracts, check for any debts, potential lawsuits, make sure the business has all the right licenses and permits. This is where a good business attorney can be invaluable. They can help you identify any potential problems.
Right, make sure everything is above board.
Yeah.
Now, how does Sanchez suggest, how do we make that first deal a slam dunk, as the 1 Hour Guide puts it?
So a big part of that is choosing the right business model.
Okay.
Sanchez recommends focusing on industries that are generally stable and profitable. So things like service-based businesses, those boring but essential businesses we talked about earlier.
Franchises can be a good option too, because they usually come with established systems and brand recognition. She suggests avoiding high-risk ventures for your first deal.
Okay, like restaurants or retail.
Exactly. Those can be much more vulnerable to economic ups and downs.
Right.
The second key element is to have a really solid transition plan. Think about what you're going to do in those first few weeks and months after you take ownership. Start by observing how things are running,
Okay.
then gradually implement improvements, and finally, work towards scaling the business. And don't underestimate the importance of building a strong team. You might even want to hire a competent operator to manage the day-to-day tasks.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So let's say we've done our research, we've secured the financing, we're ready to go.
Yeah.
The third step in the R.I.C.H framework is command.
Right.
This is where you step into the leadership role.
Yeah.
What does this phase involve, according to the 1 Hour Guide?
This phase is all about effective leadership and management. Sanchez is really big on the idea of working on the business, not just in it. Okay, yeah, I hear that a lot.
Yeah, it's a common trap for new business owners.
Yeah.
They get bogged down in the day-to-day details, and they end up burning themselves out.
Right.
And it actually limits the business's potential for growth.
Okay.
So Sanchez, she says the key is to hire a skilled operator.
An operator, so why is that so important?
The operator, they're the ones who are going to handle the day-to-day operations, oversee the staff, make sure customers are happy, manage the finances.
Okay.
This frees you, the owner, to focus on the bigger picture, the long-term strategy.
So I'm not just becoming another employee.
Exactly. You're stepping into the role of an investor,
Hmm.
a strategist.
Okay, I like that. Now, when I'm hiring this operator, what qualities should I be looking for?
So the 1 Hour Guide, it gives you a few key things to look for. You want someone who's results-driven, someone who has experience in a similar industry.
Okay,
They need to be a good communicator, a good problem solver.
makes sense.
As for where to find them, Sanchez suggests a few options. You can look within your existing employees, maybe someone who's already showing leadership potential. You can recruit from competitors.
Okay.
There are also professional hiring services that specialize in finding executives.
Okay.
And of course, don't forget about your own network.
Well,
LinkedIn can be a good resource.
right, right. And once I've hired this operator, how do I set them up for success?
Give them a clear job description. Set clear performance expectations. And have a structured onboarding process. This will help ensure a smooth transition.
Okay. So beyond hiring an operator, what else does the 1 Hour Guide say about leadership and culture?
Well, as the new owner, you have a really important role to play in setting the tone. You need to build trust with your employees and your customers.
Okay.
Sanchez emphasizes leading by example, communicating a clear vision for the future, empowering your employees, and maintaining financial discipline.
Those are good principles for any leader, really.
Absolutely. And when it comes to culture, she says, observe the existing culture before making any big changes.
Okay.
Make sure to retain key employees.
Okay.
Get feedback from the whole team.
Yeah.
And define the core values that are going to guide the company.
Okay.
This approach helps make the transition smooth and creates a positive work environment.
Gotcha. The 1 Hour Guide also provides a roadmap for the first 120 days of ownership.
Yes.
Can you walk us through that?
Sure. So the first 30 days, it's all about observation, learning, and stabilization.
Okay.
Shadow the previous owner, get to know the employees, analyze the financials, understand the customers. Don't make any drastic changes right away.
Right.
Days 30 to 60, you start looking for growth opportunities, maybe improve marketing, review your suppliers, streamline operations, address any employee concerns.
Okay.
Days 60 to 90, you focus on strengthening leadership and customer relationships. Evaluate your team, improve the customer experience, work on expanding revenue, and reinforce that company culture. And finally, days 90 to 120, you start implementing systems and automation to set yourself up for future growth.
That sounds like a really smart approach.
Yeah. And then, after you've got things running smoothly, the final step in the R.I.C.H framework is harness.
Okay, so what does this phase entail?
It's about maximizing the business's potential. Growing revenue, leveraging automation, scaling strategically, and planning your exit.
So I'm not just maintaining the business, I'm actually taking it to the next level.
Exactly. You're transitioning from being an operator to being an investor.
Okay. So let's talk about those growth tactics. What are some quick wins that Sanchez recommends?
So the 1 Hour Guide highlights a few high-impact strategies. One is to evaluate and potentially raise prices. You'd be surprised how many small businesses are undercharging for their services.
Okay. Yeah.
You can also focus on upselling and cross-selling to your existing customers.
So getting more from the customers I already have.
Exactly. Streamlining operations can also free up some cash flow.
Okay.
And of course, don't forget about marketing.
Right. Getting the word out.
Yeah. The goal is to see significant growth within the first 6 to 12 months.
Now, what about more long-term growth?
For that, you need to systemize your sales and marketing processes.
Okay. Can you give me an example?
Sure. So you could implement automated email campaigns.
Okay.
Maybe set up a referral program.
Okay.
Really optimize your online presence, especially your Google My Business profile.
Right. Those are all things I can kind of set and forget.
Exactly. The goal is to build a system that generates leads and keeps customers coming back, even without you constantly having to manage it.
So that's how I get to ownership autopilot.
Right. And that really hinges on two things: building a strong leadership team and implementing effective systems and automation.
Okay. So talk about the team first.
Sure. So you need to hire competent people to manage the key functions of the business. Maybe a general manager, a marketing lead, a financial controller.
Okay. The key players.
Yeah. And once you've got the right people in place, you can start using technology to automate a lot of the repetitive tasks.
Okay. Like what?
You could use a CRM to manage customer interactions.
Okay.
Maybe implement an AI chatbot for basic customer service.
Oh, that's interesting.
And project management software can help keep everyone organized.
So I can basically monitor the business from anywhere?
That's the idea. You have more time to pursue other ventures or just enjoy life.
That's the dream. Now, beyond just running efficiently, how can I actually scale the business?
There are a few ways to do that. You can expand the services you offer,
Okay.
maybe add new product lines. You
Okay.
could open new locations, or even acquire competitors.
Oh, wow.
If your business model is really solid, you could even look into franchising.
So lots of options for growth.
Yeah, but the key is to be strategic.
Okay.
Don't try to grow too fast.
Yeah.
Make sure you have the systems and the people to support that growth.
Right, that makes sense. So the last part of the harness phase is planning your exit. Why is that so important?
Because you want to maximize your return on investment. So you need to start thinking about how you're going to eventually sell the business.
Okay.
And the first step is to increase the business's value. Make sure you have consistent revenue growth,
Okay.
well-documented systems, a diverse customer base.
Gotcha.
And then, when you're ready to sell, you need to think about who your potential buyers might be. Private equity firms, competitors, even your own employees.
Okay, interesting. So as we wrap up our deep dive into the 1 Hour Guide by Anil Nathu, the summary of Main Street Millionaire by Codie Sanchez, it's clear that she's presenting a really powerful opportunity.
Absolutely.
She's saying, hey, you can achieve financial freedom by acquiring these existing businesses.
Right.
And it's often a faster path than, traditional employment or starting a new business.
Yeah, and the key message is financial freedom, it's not just a dream.
Right.
It's achievable if you take ownership and you're willing to take action.
And this wave of baby boomer retirements, it's creating a lot of opportunity.
Yeah, it's a buyer's market in a lot of ways.
Yeah. So to our listener, take a look around your community.
Yeah.
Think about those businesses you see every day, those Main Street businesses. Think about the potential they might hold.
Absolutely. And remember that R.I.C.H framework. Research, invest, command, harness. It's a roadmap to building wealth and achieving that financial freedom.
Exactly. So to our listener, I want you to think about a specific business that you've seen in your community.
Yep.
And ask yourself, based on what you've learned today from the 1 Hour Guide by Anil Nathu, what potential does that business have? What questions would you ask the owner if you had the chance?
It's all about shifting your perspective, seeing the opportunity that's right in front of you.
Thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure.
Buy the book at the 1 Hour Guide website for more business insights.